Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we are talking all about the upcoming full moon in Libra that's happening on April 13th, 2025. A very exciting full moon because Venus will actually be going direct on the day of the full moon. I do believe. I do believe it's the day of the full moon. It might be like a couple hours prior to the full moon. But either way, basically, within hours of the full moon in Libra, we are going to be having Venus go direct. It has been a long time coming. Venus has been retrograde since March 1st, and I cannot be the only one that is really feeling just absolutely ecstatic that Venus is done being crazy. Especially with Mercury retrograde, it being in the mix, it's definitely turned our relationship lives upside down and given us a lot of insight into what we have to work on. And this full moon in Libra is really a culmination of all of that, and really asking us, what have we learned um, through that time that Venus was retrograde? Because I think a lot of what we think about when we're talking about Libra is very Saturnian like themes. Saturn actually has its exaltation in Libra. And so when we're talking about Libra energy, we are talking about Saturn. And a lot of Libra's energy is basically what just kind of looks pretty and charming and charismatic and is very superficial versus what is really meant to last and what can go the distance. What kind of structure do you have in place as far as relationships and connections go? And so this full moon in Libra has the potential to be very powerful when it does come to our connections and really giving us a secure place and soft place to land. But it all depends on if you are willing to, one, have learned from what the insights that you were given during Venus's retrograde period. So when we're talking about a full moon in Libra, obviously we're talking about relationships, connections. We're also talking a little bit about feeling a little indecisive. We're talking about how we're connecting with other people, getting out there, being social. um, and when I say connections, it doesn't just have to be romantic. It can be our friendships. It can be our business partnerships, all of that. Just as like a little note here, I do have my computer because I have all my notes. So I'm making sure that I do not forget anything. And so if you see me looking down, that is what I'm looking at. But we have this full moon actually being at a 23, which is an Aquarius degree. And so there's this theme of independence that comes in when it comes to our relationships. And we can also look at that, I guess, in another way is, this full moon really focusing in on the independence that we feel within our relationships. It's emphasizing that Sun and Aries, I guess, archetype of me versus the we. And so finding that independence in our relationships, I think, is so important, especially since this moon is ruled by Venus and Pisces down here, that is at a 24. Now, the thing about Pisces energy, not only is Venus in Pisces, but it's in a Pisces degree. A lot of times we can see with Pisces energy that it likes to like melt in. It likes to really kind of, I don't know if escape is the right word, but it definitely likes to be one with another energy. It likes to it just likes to congeal, I guess, with other energies. And so we can find that Pisces energy, when we're talking about relationships, a lot of times we can lose ourselves in relationships when Pisces energy is afoot. And that's why I think this full moon in Libra is so pivotal, because it's giving us kind of like that reality check, potentially, about where we have lost ourselves in relationships, and giving us a great opportunity to gain our voice back, to gain our independence back when it comes to our relationships, and balance them out a little bit better. And so, another thing that we could see with that Aquarius energy is unorthodox relationships, I guess, on a world stage, kind of coming up as far as like legality. Where are we going with this on a more collective level? What rights do those kinds of relationships have? This could have to do with the LGBTQIA plus community. This could also have to do with, relationships, like open relationships or marriages or any kind of unorthodox like relationship. We could be focusing in on those relationships, even if it is brought up to us in our own personal lives as a solution to some conflicts that we're having in our personal relationships with other people. Finding unorthodox solutions in our relationships can definitely be something that we see brought up during this full moon in Libra. Um, we do see, of course, like I said, the Venus in Pisces at 24. And so not only is that like possibly losing yourself, but it's also very dreamy. It's very romantic kind of energy as well. Um, it can definitely bring a highlight to those themes for sure. And it can bring, on one end, I think, the most fulfilling, like, idealistic love, whether it's real or not, because it is Pisces energy and so it can be fantasy. But I do believe there is like a real potential for us to find the love that we have always wanted, whether it be romantic, platonic, or business. During this full moon in Libra, or while this energy is afoot. Now, judging whether or not it's fantasy or real is the kicker, because definitely, again, we're working with that Libra energy at the forefront, since it is a full moon in this sign. But I just want you to keep that in mind. But unconditional love is also something that we see a lot with Pisces energy as well. And it can bring up, as far as like realizations, when we're breaking through that fantasy of what is happening in our relationships and possibly why they're breaking down, it can give us an opportunity to realize what's missing. What do we need to work on? If we fail to work on those things or figure out a way to kind of strip ourselves naked and be able to communicate, it can show us where, what we're missing and what we need to work on. And if we're not able to do that, or if we don't ever put the work in to make the relationship possibly be able to give it to sorry, I lost my, can you tell Mercury is still retrograde? Um, it gives us the opportunity to recognize what is missing in our relationships, work on it, and so that we can go the distance. But if not, this full moon really can bring a completion to relationships. Pisces energy, it's the last sign of the zodiac. And so Pisces energy is known for bringing endings to things, as is the full moon. And so we have a full moon that is ruled by very Piscean undertones. And so we can see endings in relationships as well. Now, something I did want to also point out as we're talking about Venus and Pisces is that Venus and Pisces is actually making a beautiful little trine to Mars and Cancer, really bringing out, where do we feel safe? Where is our safe space? It can also help us to create that safe space as well. So like I was saying, like when we're talking about realizing what's missing, this trine really helps us to create a good plan. Cancer is obviously the opposite of Capricorn, but make no mistake, Mars in Cancer loves security and it really strives to create security. And so when we're talking about Venus and Mars being in two water signs that are deeply emotional and feeling and compassionate, there is a great opportunity to understand and to be empathetic and to really feel into what somebody else might need from you, and to be able to create oneness in that way, and to make some positive changes in the relationship, since Venus is in its exaltation in Pisces as well. Now, the other side of this is that all of that wonderful positive energy that we can get from that trine, and even from this full moon in general, is hard won, because we do have a square going directly from the moon in Libra to a square in to a we have a square going from the moon in Libra um, to Mars in Cancer, which can bring up some issues when we're talking about possibly having relationships where we almost want to sidestep the uncomfortable conversations. When we're talking about Mars and Cancer does not like being in Mars and Cancer, or Mars doesn't like being in Cancer because it's not direct. And so Libra is ruled by Venus. And so it really brings up, this full moon really brings up, the question of, are you going to be too afraid to rock the boat in a situation or in a relationship that might seem safe, because you know it and it's familiar, um, and therefore sidestep the uncomfortable conversations that need to happen that could allow the relationship to go the distance and really be very solid and be that safe space? Are you willing to, be vulnerable? Or are you going to kind of just continue to lead people on to think everything is fine, and then in the long run you're actually tearing down the relationship? This square is really asking us to be honest and raw when it comes to our emotions. um, Sometimes being uncomfortable for the moment is the best if it means that it creates harmony and stability in the long run. And that's really what this square is, bringing out. Other than that, that's about all I have for that square. Actually, no, one more thing. Anytime we have the moon, anytime we have the moon square um, Mars, whether it's in Cancer or not, but because it's Mars in Cancer, it's a little extra emotional. And so we can see like these big outbursts, these arguments. And I think when we're talking about this, I think that's where Venus and Mars is trine can really be helpful, because if we're able to listen to people and be empathetic and love them past the hard parts, I think that we're able to find the relationship a lot more um, appealing, because we're able to work through those things. Now, some relationships are just going to end, because a moon square Mars is literally change in relationship, a relationship being severed. So not all relationships are meant to stay. And I think that's also a big theme of this full moon in Libra, is that some relationships are just going to have to go, even if they feel familiar or even if they feel safe. You can't hold on to certain relationships just because they're familiar. Um, but yeah, so that is actually all I had to say about the full moon. I wish I could have like finished that off a little bit more polished. But just kind of like to circle back, some key takeaways. Um, is it's time to address unspoken feelings or unresolved issues. Um, just because a relationship is comfortable, it doesn't mean it's right for you and your future, because a big part of this full moon, again, is that Aquarius undertone, since it's at a 23. And so it's determining the future of our relationships. And a big part of that is asking ourselves, did we learn anything while Venus was retrograde? Have we worked to better ourselves, therefore bettering our relationships that we're in, knowing ourselves, because Aquarius is going to let its freak flag fly and it's going to be uniquely itself. And so the moon in Libra is saying, okay, I recognize my own uniqueness, my own independence. And does that mesh up with the relationships that I'm in right now? Am I being authentic in the relationships that I am in right now? I'll finish this video off on a wonderful quote. Let me make sure my my microphone is up here. Is that when you're in a relationship, two people that are halves do not make a whole. You need two whole people to just come together, and that creates a whole relationship. Otherwise, two halves don't make a whole. Otherwise, you're just having two people that are constantly draining each other for what they lack. And so I think a big part of this full moon is really making sure that you are ready for the relationship of your dreams, whether it be business, platonic, or romantic, by making sure that you are whole yourself and therefore ready to not drain your partner in whatever capacity you're entering into the relationship with. Um, and so I think this is a very hardworking vibe for a moon in Libra, but I do think that it is definitely worth it. But other than that, that is all I have for this full moon in Libra. I hope that it was helpful. Um, And yeah, just remember that some relationships outgrow their purpose. Sometimes you outgrow certain relationships, and that is okay. Um, but other than that, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.